Okay, let's go ahead and begin here. My name is Brian Anderson, and I'm with Netaphor Software, and I'll do a webinar today on the topic of supplies, workflow, and analytics. And what we're going to cover today is these items here. So supplies is most important in a lot of ways. One is it determines profitability for many partners. It determines service performance for many users because without it, you can't really do anything. And so SiteAudit offers a variety of workflows that can support the best supplies management. And so today what we're going to talk about are what those workflows might be. In addition, we're going to talk a little bit about what are the supplies analytics that are part of SiteAudit. And that also can be used for workflow, and particularly if you want to measure things like profitability and when supplies have been changed, things of that nature. So I'll cover those as well. And so I'll give you some ideas on workflow, ways you can implement supplies workflow with SiteAudit, and then we'll do a quick demo. I think it'll run about half hour and then 5-10 minutes for the demo part. And if there are any questions, be sure to ask during it through the Q&A section of WebEx, or you can wait till the end. I'll unmute the phones, and if it's agreeable to everyone, we'll open it up for questions if there isn't a lot of background noise. So with that, let's begin here. So let's take a look here at the different ways that you can use supplies management within SiteAudit. First, there is alerting. Very basic, but in SiteAudit there's basic alerting, which is using standard alerts. There's also more granular, more flexible alerting by using custom alerts. And then there's very precise, action-oriented alerting using thresholds. So you got a variety of options to use when you want to get alerted about supplies. A second area, and this may complement what you do with the alerting part of your workflow, is that you can get reports. And typically those reports are delivered as a scheduled report. And there are some best practices that I'll cover, but basically what we see most popular and serves our partners and users the best is that if there's a daily report that is delivered, where you can take some action on items that need to be replaced, supply items need to replace that day, then that provides some efficiency. At the same time, there's different logistics reports that can be set up that help the back office order supplies and have those ready in the warehouse by the time that they're needed. And that complements really the daily supplies. So reporting, we'll talk about that, and I think that's a really important area for workflow management. Then the third item, and this is increasingly popular for organizations that want to create the maximum amount of efficiency, and automation. Essentially what is automation, is integrating supplies information from SiteAudit into a third-party system. And those systems can be everything from an ERP system. So if you're familiar with, say, Avatic in Europe, if you're familiar with eAutomate in the US, products like that, you can get supplies information that goes right into the system, triggers an order process, and gets it out to the end user before they may even know about it. So integrations is another area, and SiteAudit offers an API we'll talk about and how you can integrate your third-party application with it. And the last area that complements really the others is analytics, and that's really done for a variety of reasons. It's done in the initial assessment what the customer has in terms of their workflow supply problems, It can be used periodically, say in quarterly analysis, to see how supplies management is being fulfilled. It helps in forecasting. So there's a lot that's offered in analytics. It does take a little bit of training to use it, but the payoff is significant. Okay, so those are the 4 areas we're going to cover, and I'm going to start first with alerting here. So alerting, there's it's a basic type of information gathering. Is that there's an issue with a supply. It may be that it's low on its supply, and different ways you can get that. You can get it sent directly to, say, if you're an MPS partner, SiteAudit will send that directly to somebody who's monitoring supplies. Or it could go into like a help desk. Okay, so for a larger organization, you might have products like Remedy or one of the other help desk applications, and you want that supply to go right into a person who's in charge of monitoring supplies. That's human monitoring, and that's works. It is a little bit more expensive than the automation, but it certainly works, and there's lots of flexibility in how you can set that up within the SiteAudit supplies workflow. And then, as I mentioned, also there's the third-party integration applications too. And for your information, when you install SiteAudit, there are some sample integrations. One of those is Remedy. And so you can take a look at that sample integration. It uses a style sheet. And so that is something that's really almost ready out of the box. There's some modifications that you can do if you're comfortable working with style sheets, but that'll go right into Remedy. And then we also have, just as a footnote here, we do have a professional services group that can help with that integration. Anyway, so integration provides benefit of being more automated, can generate a trouble ticket without any person having to be involved. So it's a bit more efficient. So let's look at good old setting up notifications, alerts. We call them notification rules in SiteAudit, and there are 3 different basic types. One is that you can just use the pre-configured standard alert, and let me just point to that a little bit. So when you use a pre-configured one, then the alert conditions are already set up for you. So you open up SiteAudit, you go to Setup, you go down to Notifications, and there you'll see a list of pre-configured alerts or notification rules that are already done for you. All you have to do is enter in who the recipient might be. So in that case, it's this poor person right here. And then you can add in a subject line. And one of the great things about SiteAudit is that you can use keywords. So you'll see here keyword serial number. So you can add serial number, and what that will do is, so there's let's say an alert on let's just pick a Xerox device. In the subject line, you'll have the serial number for that Xerox device. And it's triggered by any of these conditions here that happen to be unresolved. So if you've got a Xerox device, its toner out is its message, then it'll generate an email alert, include the serial number, and then you'll know what to do. Okay? Easy to do, standard, pre-configured, takes you a second to use it. Many partners use it, great way to do it. A second way, see my things are going to stay here, is to use a custom alert. And let me just see if I can get rid of these pointer things here. I don't think I can easily. Yeah, maybe I can. Here we go. Let's go back to the pointer here. So on a custom alert, there's a couple more steps involved. And you don't need to be a sophisticated user to use custom alerts for supplies. You just need to be able to read. So normally the steps are that you're going to have some information collected in SiteAudit. You would go to the incident history view, and there it'll show you a list to say supply incidents, supply errors, and you can look and see what those errors say in terms of what their description is. So in the example we have here, we've got a Samsung. This is the model, okay? And the Samsung provides a description. It says time to order. And there's some more detail you can't see here. But what you can do then is say, okay, well, I want a custom supplies alert, and I'll create that myself, and you can do that quite easily. So you create a notification rule. Then you go and you say, okay, well, I want this for a model containing, in this case, it's a CLP, okay, a Samsung CLP. So it says CLP, and then the second item here, it says contains time to order. Okay, so those are the two conditions you set up for your custom rule. And if those conditions are true at any time, okay, and you have everything else set up properly, like the notification recipient and so forth, then you'll get an alert based upon those two conditions being true. And that may be the best way for setup for some occasions, but it gives you that flexibility if that's what you'd like to do. Okay, so that's the first one. Again, just to repeat, is that you've got a standard pre-configured. Second one is you've got a custom, which you as a fleet manager or user can define yourself. Okay, now let's look at the third one here, and I'm going to erase again, so just bear with me here while I get my eraser. Just get rid of all this stuff here. There we go. Okay, because I want to point some things out here. So let's go to a threshold alert, and this does involve a little more time, but its precision is really worth it. So you have SiteAudit, you've installed it, you've collected lots of information, and for your environment, what you want to do is be very precise in terms when it's time to replace a supply. You've got a lot of options to work with, and I know you've got to look really closely here. But if I want to set up a supplies or consumables threshold, I can say, well, I want to be notified when the supply level gets to X%. Or I have another choice. I might say, I want to be notified when there are a certain number of days remaining left on the supply. And there's some other choices you can make there, but basically in the threshold configuration, you're setting up those conditions. So what that does is when that condition, let's say that supply level gets to 2%, okay, that'll put an incident into the incident history, and the way alerting works is it checks the incident history and sees what's unresolved. And because you've taken that next step, which is to create a threshold rule and the notifications, then once that's generated, you've got your rule set up that says supply level has reached 2%, then you can get an alert. And that allows you a lot of flexibility. So you could say, for example, you could set some very granular alerts on a set of production equipment because they may need to be monitored a little closely. You set that maybe at 20%. Office equipment, maybe not so you set that at 2%. And you can identify those devices by make, model, serial number, etc. So again, you can be very granular with your threshold alerts. Very popular way to do it. Okay, so that takes care of alerting, if you will. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I've got good. Okay, so now let's move on to reporting. This is actually an area where I think is very useful because it provides a lot of information. There are a lot of metrics that are available that help you create a lot of efficiencies here. So let's begin with sort of the basic workflow here. So you've got a device, you've got SiteAudit running, and what you want to do is you want to get a daily report, and you want that report to run, let's say, first thing in the morning, whatever that time is for you. And so what happens is that you get a report. It may go to a specific individual responsible for replacing supplies at that location. They see what are the items that need to be replaced, where do they need to be replaced, and then they can fulfill that task rather easily. Now, complementing that, as I alluded to earlier, is a second type of report. Maybe it's a longer term, what I call logistics report, that runs periodically, and according to what our best practices recommendation would be, is it would be run weekly, and that'll have some predictive supply information in there, such as the estimated replacement date, the estimated days remaining, the estimated pages remaining. You can use all three. You can use one or two of them. Doesn't matter. But that'll come to you, and it'll give you lots of information about what you need to order, when you need to order it, and likely when you're going to need to deliver it to the customer. So that's in the logistics area. That helps you fill the warehouse with supplies, so that you can really offer a program that's just in time. So that's the workflow for reporting. And again, I tend to favor that. Let's look at some specific examples here. So let's look at the daily report. So you may have this run at, say, 8 in the morning. It gets delivered, and the type of information that is delivered is, okay, department, where you got to go, the device, a description of what needs to be done, everything else that you might need in a report. So you get that, you print it out, and you go do whatever you need to do. The also nice thing about that is we have some pre-configured reports that you can use, but the way SiteAudit works is that there's over 40 different fields or columns of information that you could add or subtract from your report. So you can add in whatever best is appropriate to manage your fleet. You can add that into the report. And again, it's scheduled, it's reliable, comes every day, and there's lots of different formats you can have it in. CSV on down to XML, if that is what you like. So that's the daily report. A second daily report, and this is just brand new. It's now offered to hosted customers, and this really provides a lot of efficiencies. What it does is it runs each day, or you could have it every week, but I would recommend daily. What you receive as a MPS partner is an email with a link in it, and you simply click the link. It opens up a SharePoint document. Okay, so it's an Excel document that allows you to look at all your supplies based upon some parameters you've set up. Okay, and the parameters are things that help you manage in your workflow, manage the supply chain. The actual steps to get this process started would be that you would work with our support team, Netaphor support team, and say, well, I want these type of things in a daily report. In my report, they'll be delivered as a link, and it runs. And what you get with that link is you open it up, and there's an Excel document, and allows you to do lots and lots of filtering. And you can kind of drill down on the data, make some decisions on what needs to be ordered and sent out, and it provides lots of information. There's, again, if you can look at the consumables view, anything really in the consumables view and other places can be incorporated in this report. It runs only for hosted customers, and again, it's a link that you select, and it brings up this Excel report, which you can play around with. So that's new, and if you're interested more in this, why don't you contact me after the webinar, and I can show you how it works. We can run a trial, a 30-day trial, and you can see if it helps you in your supplies management. So that's another option for daily replacement reporting. Now let's look at the logistics reporting. Remember, that's longer-term reporting, where you'd want to be able to know information so that you can order it from a supplier and have it in your warehouse ready to go. So what we're looking at is, this is a view from SiteAudit consumables view, And what you're using in this is some metrics. There's things like days remaining, replacement date, and pages remaining. And there's a filter. You can see this filter that has been checked, and you can set up your report so it says, what items do I need to replace this month and next month? Or I could say what I need, next week if I wanted to pick next week if I wanted to be that quick about it. And then this report then comes to you, okay? And you've got different formats that can come to you, and you just look at it and you can order it based upon what your needs are. So here you can see here's a list of supplies and the number of days. Okay, so this one here, this Scion, it's probably not Scion, photoconductor drum. This is for a Sharp device. 13 days is the estimated remaining. Based on the metrics that SiteAudit produces, the date would be the 2nd of March this year. So, SiteAudit is a very sophisticated tool. It allows us to track things like the pages that are run off a supply, the amount of toner that's being consumed, so it can calculate a rate, and you add in the number of days or time, and it provides an estimate, okay? And as the device runs more and more, it gets more and more data, the estimate becomes more and more accurate. So if you've got, say, 50% of a supply used, okay, and you can see that in this column right here, it tells you how much was been used, then the precision is quite accurate. Okay, so typically you're going to look at this report, and you're going to check as well how much has been used. And in general, I'd like to see at least say 25%'s been used, maybe more, and then I know that my logistics report is really accurate here. So this is a report that can be scheduled and sent weekly. If you don't want to use a scheduled report, you can always just look at the viewer and filter it that way as well. So that's logistics reporting. A final area here is in the workflow is using just as a check the life cycle supply of the supply. So what you can do is just check when something was installed, the level it was installed at. So why that's important is you want to make sure if you sent a new supply that it was 100% when it was installed. You can make sure that it was installed, okay? You can see when it was replaced and the level it was replaced at too. So this is a supplies fulfillment tracking where you can see, make sure everything that was ordered, sent out, actually was done, fulfilled. Okay, so that looks at the workflow with the alerting and the reporting. Let's take a quick peek at some integration options for you. So there's two basic options for integrations. And again, the key part of this is that you want to automate the workflow so there's really less cost involved. And what I mean that by less cost is that there are less people having to be involved with managing supplies. So there's a way to do email alerts into third-party applications. So you can see down here at the bottom here, these are different third-party applications that we have integrations for one sort of another. So you can set up an alert rule. There's a style sheet that gets applied, and then it goes into that application. The application reads that and then triggers a trouble ticket, and that typically is like a supply order. Okay. Now, if you're interested in that, Netaphor has a professional service staff that can help you with the design of that. There are some samples. As I mentioned, when you install SiteAudit, you go to the SiteAudit folder, you go to, I think it's called samples, EN for English, and you'll find a number of samples that you can peruse there. Very easy to do, very easy to implement. Depending on what's required, I'd say easy. It can be trivial, but sometimes it's not. But most likely it could be, and the time turnaround is pretty quick generally. So that's one option. The second option is to go all in and say you want to have a connector And we have something in SiteAudit called Back Office Services. It's an API that uses web services to deliver information to third-party applications. An example of that is our new ServiceNow connector that takes in information into the ServiceNow application, and you get great information about incidents and asset information. But there are other examples as well. The connector or connectors, there are quite a few of them. We're constantly building them out. If you've got an ERP system that you use and you want all or some of the site audit data, let us know and we can design a program for you. It's the best in terms of workflow automation, saves the most amount of time and cost over whatever period you'll be managing supplies. Just as a comparison, I'll do this really quickly. Everyone's got great products. They tell you that. I think SiteAudit has an edge. And why that has an edge is that the way SiteAudit works is that we don't do blasts. So we don't go and collect everything at one time. We collect certain pieces of information, and that allows us to reduce the amount of traffic. It also improves the response time. So if you're managing supplies and you're using an integration of some sort, the advantages are that you're going to have more timely results, and you're not going to be a network burden to anyone. Okay, so that's all I'll say about comparisons. So now let's shift a little bit. We'll look at analytics here, and these are important that complement the workflow. You may use them in the assessment process or, say, on a quarterly basis. One of a really good one is to look at yield. So yield is measured in terms of pages. How many pages does a supply get from its use? Okay, so you don't need to have coverage for this. SiteAudit does that for you, so forget coverage. It's an old, out-of-use term that it really doesn't mean anything anymore. What you want to have is pages. So again, SiteAudit tracks all the pages. It looks at the consumption rate, and over time makes a prediction. As I mentioned, it's useful if you look at that after about 50% has been used. 25% is pretty good. 50 is better. So you'll know exactly what kind of yield you'll get from a supply, and where that you can see that yield in the consumables view. So anytime you have SiteAudit open, you want to check out what yield looks like. It's a hidden column. You just go to the column chooser, add it to your view, and you'll see what the yields are. If a device hasn't done any printing, then the yield will be blank. Okay, so don't expect a yield if you haven't done any printing. So it looks at yield, and then you can see, in this case, you can see, well, this is the amount of pages printed on that supply. This is the estimated yield. Only 96% has been used. So this one, two things. One is that this was replaced before it was completely empty. Had it run its full course, you would have got roughly another 1,000 pages from it. So this is just an example. And how you use this in the practical sense, typically when you're doing an audit, you want to be able to know yield, because that's going to help you if you're an MPS partner. You're going to need to know yields in order to price your consumables properly. So in the example we're looking at here, we're looking at a consumable for a Xerox 7545. In the SiteAudit view, it says, well, this is the yield, okay, that the actual yield you're going to get. But when I compare that with what Xerox estimates you'll get at 5%, it says 26,000. So why is that good? Well, when you get a higher yield than the specification, your profitability is going to be better. Okay. When you get a lower yield than the specification, that means that you probably priced your consumables too low, so you're going to be losing money. So in other words, the organization or the customer is using more supply than anticipated. And so if you're charging on a per page, per copy basis, then you need to look at that. So the application here really is, in the assessment phase, you want to look at this. You may also want to check it out quarterly, just in case you need to make some adjustments, if possible, to the cost per page. So that's one analytic, yield. Let's look at another one. Here we're looking at waste cost. And again, this may affect maybe not so much the end user, because they typically don't pay for their own supplies. It might affect, more likely to affect the partner who's providing the supplies. If we look at this, this is again from the consumables view, and what we can see is that there's two supplies here. Their status is replaced. Okay, so SiteAudit knows when they're replaced. You can see when they were replaced on. Okay, and this is the level that they were replaced at, 34 and 27. So, sometimes the explanation for why something's replaced before it's empty is not so clear. In this case, I would estimate or guess that these two were replaced at the same time. They were on the 24th. And so someone replaced both of them for whatever reasons from the same device. And as a result, then lost out on quite a bit of supply there. So we call that waste, supply waste. So in the consumables view, you can go and you can look at what's been replaced and see what the average level is across a set of supplies. And I'll show you more in if you have ever seen or know of Analyzer, we're going to take a look at that next. So Analyzer uses that information for, and again, Analyzer is the tool for assessments and quarterly business reviews. So it'll look at supply levels, and the example we're looking at here, we're looking at the average replacement level across time. So this is a trend for customer A, okay? And you look at September through February of this current year. This is the amount of supply that was remaining on average across the number of supplies that were replaced. So this is very common to see anywhere from 7, 8, 9, 10 maybe as an average, down to maybe 5% in well-managed environments on average. And so, if you think about, you've got, maybe several thousand devices in your MIF or out there. Maybe it's a large company or something like that. 4, 5, 7, 10% on average, it starts to be real money. Okay, so the Analyzer tool has a report in it called consumables, and it allows you to see how that looks, that waste over time. So here we're looking at the chart that's calculated the waste for this particular example. So we've got September here to February. And the way it works is that SiteAudit presents sort of the average level. Then you, as the fleet manager, you can play around with, well, what if instead of 5% here, you can't see it, but it is 5%, we were able to manage supplies so that they were replaced at 1%. What would be the cost savings? And based on the number of supply units and so forth, it estimates what your savings would be. And again, if you're a large environment, it's going to be substantial. If it's a small environment, then the waste cost isn't that substantial. But it is important to know that. And so you've got a tool in Analyzer that helps you look at supply waste. Okay. Now, real quickly, let's as we move through here, I want to just point out a couple of new things in version 6.8. If you don't have 6.8, I highly recommend it. It's the best release we've ever had. But we've added in that, and this is sort of a trend for consumables, is trying to get more and more information about the specific supply itself. So for some vendors, not all, but a growing list, we'll be adding the part number. Okay, so here's an example, or you've got a Samsung device, and you want to know what the supply part number is. That's now available in SiteAudit. And where that appears is that there's a new alert the email alert body has changed. This is in 6.8. This is what is so cool about it. There's lots of information in this alert body, not only about what's happened, but also down at the bottom there you've got a complete list of all your supplies on this particular device and the serial numbers that need to be ordered. So this one right here, you can see this. This is an HP. This is the serial number for that particular supply. Then also there's part numbers too that you can look at, so you can order that, use that as well. So that's all in 6.8. And everything we've talked about today, if you want to go and read up about it, there's our support portal. This is the URL for it, and you can just simply go there. If you don't have an access credential, because you'll need that in order to get to all the articles and reports and videos and stuff like that, then just send an email to support@netaphor.com, and if you're a partner of good standing, then they'll provide you with a credential, and you can use the query field search function in order to find the reports that you want. Okay, so let's go on to the demo here. Before I forget, I wanted to mention that there is another webinar tomorrow, and it's a different topic, but somewhat related. It's on our new ServiceNow connector. And if you're involved at all with ServiceNow, supplies is an important issue with incident management, so you might want to attend that as well. So okay, let's look at a quick demo here, and then we'll be done. So first, let's look at this. Okay, so this is your consumables view, and what you see here is some of those metrics I mentioned to you earlier. So in the SiteAudit view, there are estimated remaining days, estimated pages remaining, estimated replacement date. So these consumables are all in use, and so based upon the amount of usage here, you can see this particular supply has used 47%. This is its current level. Okay, so this information is really pretty accurate here, and so the estimate is that this will need to be replaced on the 19th, about a month from now. So you would use that in your workflow, okay, in your reporting workflow, and just to show you how that would operate is that, if I can get around the WebEx here, let's see if I can move this. I can't. So I need to get to this. Okay, so you have to move this out of the WebEx. Is kind of in the way here. There we go. So this is the consumables view. I want to get a schedule report, so you can do that. You create a schedule report. There's all sorts of documentation on that. If I wanted to, no, it says it's disabled. Let's enable it. If you wanted to get a daily report, then you would use the scheduler. You would go and set it up. You'd set up the triggers. So if you want to set it for daily, let's say, then you just say daily here and specify how long you want it and what time of day you wanted it delivered. And so we'll run this. This is a daily report, and I'll just manually generate this so you see what it looks like. And so that'll get you information. It'll go to anyone that you wanted to go to. And let's just take a look, see if I can show you how that's delivered here. If I go to my Outlook, because I had sent it to myself, you should see how the report comes in. Assume it does come in. Here we go. So this is what the daily report would look like. It's an attachment. You open it up, and I happen to pick. It's been paused. Okay, hang on just a minute here. Looks like the video has been paused. Hang on, let me restart this. Okay, here we go. So you may have missed a couple steps there, but anyway, so what happened is I went through a schedule report, showed how you can how that's delivered. It's delivered as an attachment, and you just set that up in SiteAudit. Here, there's another one just came in. Let's take a look at that one, and you can see it depends on how it was set up, but anyway, it gets attached and then you get delivered. Okay, so that's that. Then let's take another quick peek because we're running out of time here. So that's the consumables view. Let's take a quick look at some analytics here, and we can look at those here. So here is the supplies analyzer report, and this comes with the analyzer license. And what you can see here, there's a navigation page, and the way it works is that you point to a customer, it brings in the data, and then you've got all this information that are in different charts and things like here. So this one shows you the number of consumables replaced by month. This is the average level they were replaced at. You could do some filtering here if I wanted to look at days remaining and see if I looked at, let's say 3 days remaining, what do I need to replace? And it should give me a list of what needs to be replaced in those days. Now if we go to supplies waste, here we see this is this chart, okay, and it provides this average level here. It says 5%, and then I can add in what I think the average supplies costs are. So let's say that they're $175, and it's inexpensive. Say we're in France, and so I could say, well, currently it's at 5%, but we're really good at this. We're going to be down at 2%. So let me just refresh this data here, and then we can see it's a problem with WebEx. Refresh all, okay, and we can see that it's changed here. So if we went to say we're getting not so good, refresh all, and so you don't replace as much there. So that's a good tool to use in order to calculate your waste costs with your customers. And let me that also, it should tell you, also integrates into a presentation. So you can simply, there's a PowerPoint that links into that. And so what you've got from that is a presentation that's ready to go that you can show your customer. Those are the average levels we talked about. So this is all part of Analyzer. If you haven't tried Analyzer before, I would recommend getting a license and trying it out. Okay, so let's look at one last thing here, and this is that daily report. It says weekly, but it's more like daily. It's just a link that comes to you, and you click on the link, and it opens up an Excel report. And here I've got my report. I can do some filtering with this. So I could filter by model if I wanted to. It gives me all the information that I want. And so all I have to do is open this up, and it would give me lots and lots of information. I also have different parameters I can look at. So if I wanted to look at just maybe OPC, drums, things like that, then I could bring that up, and it would show me just the OPC items as well, or fuser units. I could look at just the fuser units that need to be replaced. So this is a report that runs automatically for hosted customers. And if you're interested in getting a 30-day free trial of this, just let me know. You can send me an email, and we'll set this up for you. Well, thank you so much for joining.